Story 1. Firefighter. Just got back from a major house fire. 5 stations and 2 agencies were called out. Someone needed to be there. Boss was there too. He dropped everything at home with his family this morning and responded. Story 2. To all the people who work any holiday, thanks. I hope you get a day off or a break soon. I've done it. I will probably have to do it again at some point. Story 3. Emergency room registered nurse. Doesn't matter if it's a holiday or not. What's my boss doing? Hanging out with their family, of course. Things run better without the management team there anyway. Story 4. Keeping a critical system running smoothly. It is my turn this year. Next year I am off. My boss is happily spending time with his family after coming in to check that we are okay during the day, even though he should be off. I have him on speed dial in case of a catastrophe. Life is good. I am happy to help keep the modern world spinning in peace, if just for a bit longer. Story 5. We keep our businesses open only to employees, not the public, because so many people need somewhere to be during the holidays. It's a hard time of year if you don't have family, are recovering from any addictions, or have conditions that require a routine for the best results. All staff receive a day of holiday pay, 0 public interaction, and if they choose to work, they get normal pay for those hours as well. It's one of our most popular policies each year. Story 6. Caregiver for a woman with locked-in syndrome. I could have taken the day off, but I didn't want her to be alone since she didn't have any plans for today. We had a little spa morning and now we're about to have some chocolate mousse desserts together before I go to my brother's for dinner. Story 7. I need the money, and company policy is if Christmas falls on one of your normal workdays, you work. As for my bosses, my direct supervisor is working the morning shift today. Her boss is filling in at sites where people have called out, and his boss is doing the same. Story 8. I'm a nursing home chaplain. I chose to work today. Many folks have family visits, but many do not. I pass out poinsettias and enjoy a slow day of checking in. My director is off. My bishop is off. Still breathing, so the divine is still working. Story 9. Downloading the sleigh, stabling the reindeer, grooming and feeding them, and making sure the big man hit all his objectives this year. Contacting various and sundry sovereign nations to explain why we violated their airspace. Putting out propaganda for next year to all pertinent media. Boss is sleeping, he worked all last night. The missus told us to leave him alone. Tomorrow we start fielding complaints from clients, which is the worst part of the gig. And for your information, those complaints and the accompanying behavior are the #1 reason clients end up on the other list next year. Merry Christmas and Happy Yule. Story 10. 911 dispatcher here. Worked yesterday, and I'm working today. Someone has to do it. Emergency services are a constantly necessary part of life. If Granny chokes on her fruitcake, you're going to need an ambulance. On Christmas Eve, I volunteered so people with kids can have the day off. Story 11. I used to love working Christmas Eve and Christmas. There would always be something important that had to get done. I could always charge 2 or 3 times the going rate. Most times I could just name my price. The longer I held out, the more I could get. They never knew we celebrated Hanukkah in our home. Story 12. 911 dispatcher. It's a 24/7 job. I actually have the day off after working my share of holidays. My boss is off. But then, he spent 30 years working holidays, so I think that's fair. Story 13. I worked Christmas Eve night. I am a palliative specialist nurse in the community. People are dying 24/7, my friends, and my job is to keep them comfortable at home while they are doing it. Story 14. When I worked at Blockbuster, I had to work every Christmas because everyone had to work that day except, of course, our boss, the store manager. 2 most annoying things were getting a phone call every 5 minutes with people asking if we were open and people asking, "Why are you open today?" and having to tell them, "Because you're here," politely. Story 15. I work for myself. Today is a great day to work and not have clients email or call. Very efficient and productive. I do wait until after dinner and work late, though. I don't take away from family time. Story 16. I work the front desk in a nursing home. On Christmas, suddenly everyone remembers their loved ones who are in nursing homes. So the phone rings constantly since most of our residents do not have cell phones. Someone has to answer the phone since the nurses and aides are busy with patient care. My boss will be off but will probably receive several calls from the nursing staff when problems arise. Story 17. I work at a treatment center for abused teenagers who often have addiction problems from self-medicating. It is a lockdown facility because many have court-ordered care instead of jail. It is open 24/7, so some staff have to be here on Christmas. It is actually some of the best Christmas times I have ever experienced. Most of these kids have been horrifically abused in ways most people have not heard of in their own lives. It is amazing to see them get gifts, likely for the first time in their lives, from people who genuinely care greatly about them. The realization that comes over them now that they are safe and know that there are people who care about them and how this transforms them is just amazing. Story 18. I'm a wildlife biologist, and I'm working because I'm organizing a Christmas bird count on December 28th. My boss and their supervisor took the week off, but I'm going to Australia in January for 3 weeks and will be observing birds there. Story 19. Airline pilot. Because it pays a lot to work on Christmas, and I prefer to have the entire month of December off while everyone else is working. My boss? Not sure, actually. I don't even know who exactly my direct boss is. We are pretty autonomous as long as you don't damage the aircraft. Story 20. I already had 4 Christmas gatherings before today, so I'm driving food delivery because people are more generous with tips today, and I have nothing else going on. Story 21. Aircraft mechanic. The industry doesn't care about Christmas, and I have no one to spend it with anyway, so I might as well make money. My boss is sitting next to me. Story 22. Any job I've had in my life that required people to work on a major holiday, the bosses and supervisors have always been present as well. If it's important enough for business to be conducted on a holiday, it's important enough for management to also be present. I've been lucky there. Story 23. Why? Because the trucking business runs 24/7/365. What is my boss doing? He is on call, so he will be answering his phone whenever any of us call him for any incidents or emergencies. And knowing him, he has probably been calling dispatch every few hours to make sure we are all okay. I am lucky to have a boss who actually cares about us drivers, because he remembers what it was like when he was a driver. Story 24. I work as a chef in a nursing home, and I don't have kids or anything, so I'd rather let my coworkers with family have the day off. I cook a nice meal for the residents who don't get to go home, and the time and a half is nice. Story 25. When I worked for retailers and grocers that were open 24 hours, we always took a volunteer first. That way, anyone who wanted to work could. There are actually a lot of people like this. If we didn't get enough volunteers, then we would start a random drawing for names, and those people would get scheduled the minimum number of hours for shifts, usually 4. This ensured that people worked the shortest shift possible if they drew the short straw. It also allowed them to swap shifts with someone who may have wanted to work a little more but not the whole day. Another advantage of this was that more people got scheduled, so it meant there were no favorites. Everyone pitched in at least a little bit, and it was fair. People could absolutely work it out to work more or less if they could with one another. And you always overschedule a little because someone is bound to call in sick and leave you shorthanded. It's wiser to overschedule and have everyone there so you can send people home if you don't need them, ensuring you're not making them work extra hard because you're shorthanded. That's also a great way to ruin trust. And managers always worked no matter what because you didn't ask the employees to work on a day you didn't. Story 26. I'm a ramp worker at an airport. My seniority may be at the level where I could have today off, but all full-timers work a 4-on, 3-off schedule where Wednesday is the day all full-timers are in because it's crossover. I should have it off next year, though, but I'm honestly not sure if I'll want it off. Story 27. Pastry chef at a fine dining restaurant. Everyone gets dessert in December. I'll rest in January. My chef is working the line. He gets here before everyone and doesn't leave until the last check is sold. Story 28. Wife left for work at 5:30 a.m. Works as a custodian for a church that has an extremely early morning service, which is customary, at least in Scandinavian Christian churches on Christmas Day. Story 29. Hospital operator folks want to reach out to their inpatient loved ones, and I do the transfers. I also page doctors when patients have urgent matters to discuss. My boss is on call today in case we have issues. Her boss and those above her are off work because they are middle managers to executives. My extended family did Christmas last weekend, and my household has no kids, so we're not stressed about having an event for the holiday. When I get home, it's cuddles and Chinese for dinner, so I can't complain. Story 30. Death doesn't holiday. Funeral director. Edit. My boss is at home, bothering us in the office by micromanaging from home because he hates his family, and I'm sure they hate him. Story 31. I work at a pet boarding facility. Animals have to get fed and exercised. I am the manager. I was there at 6 a.m. today to help clean and let dogs out, and I will go back tonight to help the evening crew. I've had one Christmas off in the last 14 years, and I've never minded working Christmas. Story 32. My wife works at a retirement home planning events and activities. She is throwing a party for the folks who do not have anyone else. I believe her boss is also there. Story 33. Nursing home. Department heads were off from noon on Christmas Eve through Boxing Day, but work is always more relaxed when the daytime staff isn't around. Story 34. I used to own a pet care company, and holidays were our busiest days. I would work 13 to 14 hours straight on Christmas so my staff could have it off. It was nice, actually. The roads are so quiet at 6 a.m. on Christmas Day, and many of my clients left treats and presents, which was always fun to find. Story 35. Supervisor at an answering service. It's slow enough on Christmas that we only need one person working, so I volunteer to work most of the day so our operators don't have to. Story 36. Nurse in hospital. No, management does not work, but my boss sends in treats. Managers get bonuses for meeting market benchmarks, and she uses a lot of hers to buy morale items for the floor. Sometimes we might see the hospital or network president swing by with a Christmas cake, thanking us for working, but that usually only happens on day shift. Story 37. My girlfriend worked last night and is pulling a 15-hour shift today. She is a nurse. Not only is there the higher pay, but we have no kids, and I was raised Jehovah's Witness, no longer am. So there would be no Christmas with my family, and Christmas has never been important to me. We would just be spending some Christmas time with her sister and husband who are doing Christmas with his family. By her covering someone else's shift, it means that someone's mom or dad gets to be home for their Christmas, which is more important than the money. So it's a win-win. Story 38. I used to work Christmas when I had a job at one of the only two 24/7 petrol stations in my rural city. Travelers needed petrol, and our city was both a tourist destination and a major thoroughfare through our region to bigger cities. One year, my boss was asleep in the office, as he insisted that he'd be at the station all day on Christmas. Thanks to a no-show after his shift the day before, by the time I walked in at 11 p.m., he was already 18 hours into his Christmas shift and really not doing so crash hot because of it. Story 39. University Security Supervisor. Security officers are always working when you aren't. We call this overtime season. My boss is also working. He's an awesome dude. Story 40. Psychiatric nurse here. I have this Christmas off, but I work every other Christmas. My boss has every Christmas off. All middle managers and above have holidays off. Story 41. I am off, but my brother, a kiln manager, got called in at the last minute because two workers quit at the last minute, and his boss told him that responsibility rolls downhill. Ruined Christmas because people need bricks on Christmas, I guess. Story 42. Locomotive engineer trains need to move and people need to travel. We do not really have bosses in a traditional sense, but they are out here working with us or, at the very least, on call at home if needed. Story 43. Nurse here. I am working because sick people don't magically get better for holidays. My boss is on call. I am currently resisting the temptation to text her memes, but we all know I won't last my full shift before the memes go flying her way. Story 44. Starbucks. Because we have to work 2 out of 3 holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Eve, and I already had Thanksgiving off. My boss doesn't work holidays. I wish I could go home for Christmas, but I can't. Story 45. Therapy in a skilled nursing facility. Because insurance does not care if it is a holiday, they will not pay out if quotas are not met every week. My direct boss and overhead bosses are all at home with their families. Story 46. I worked for a few hours today. I'm a housekeeper, and I own my own business with my own private clients. I try to cancel as little as possible, so I don't lose the income, and around the holidays I work together with my clients to reschedule them as needed for both of our schedules. One of my Wednesday clients said she had no plans for Christmas, and I didn't have any until later in the afternoon, so my husband and I said we would still come clean her house this morning as usual. We got her some chocolates and treats for her cats as a Christmas gift. Took about 2 hours to clean her house, then grabbed some food on the way home, watched Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire one, while we ate, and now we're waiting for our family to come over in about an hour. Story 47. I work in highway maintenance. We worked during a snowstorm yesterday and got everything cleaned up by 4 o'clock. So luckily we were able to go home for Christmas Eve and, so far, haven't gotten any calls yet for Christmas Day. Being a former emergency medical technician and not having kids, I've worked through many Christmases, and I always felt bad for people working menial jobs, mostly convenience stores, to be working today. Obviously, there are jobs that need to work 24/7 or as needed on days off, such as mine, but if you are a cashier at the gas station or convenience store, there's no reason for you to be working.